when you watch the movie there, you see when people arrive, they've got British passports. And I'm thinking of two quotes in particular. One, almost an incantation from Sivanandan, who would say, "We are here because you were there," to explain the black presence in Britain. And the other from Gilbert in Andrea Levy's book, Small Island, where he says, "How do you not know we?"
Sure.
You know, that I could point out anywhere in England, I could tell you all about your history, and you never heard of us. And it seems as though in order to be politically engaged in a way that you were, you first had to teach white history, actually, to the British people. I'm wondering how, in order to make the alliances you talked about in that interview, that we have to work with others and progressive whites and so on, what kind of education you had to do in order to make sure that you were fighting as brother and sister and not as younger brother to older white sister or older white brother?
Well, I mean, the education, as you would understand, was not formal, and it was done at the level of engagement. Because remember, it wasn't only a matter of dismantling the racism of the British state at state level. It was also the racism within the trade union movement, and that was dire. So you're quite right. Teaching history, I've always said that one of the major functions we as black people have performed in this society is to interpret Britain to itself. Yep. The problem is that Britain is so damned arrogant that it can't even hear what we're trying to say to it, never mind adjust as a result of what it has heard. And that has been the dialectic, so to speak, over the last 50 years that we've been here. So yes, we've had to do the educating. And it is in a sense that kind of educating that we did in CARD. I linked up with white people of my age, went around trying to find a job or trying to find a room or whatever else it may be, and I'd be told, no job, the job's gone or there's no room. My colleague would step out, usually we're in a cafe drinking something or other, and go to the same people and, yes, come on Monday, when do you want the room? And that was rife all over the place. So it is the fact that we were able to provide that evidence to the state that helped to give rise to the 1968 Race Relations Act. But there was something else too. The white working class had been used really throughout history to engaging in activism on employment and labor issues, mainly through unions and mainly in relation to the workplace. There was no tradition, for example, of white working class activity, agitation on the question of schooling and education as this country experienced through what we did. So we were having to take on employers, take on unions that were reluctant to take on employers, and do all of that in the workplace, working harder than everybody else and for longer hours, and then go home and take on what the schools were doing to our children, the fact that the police were harassing them on the streets, the fact that we were being denied proper housing and so forth. So that whole cocktail, if you like, of issues, which were part and parcel of how we experienced the state and had to respond to it, was something very, very new for the working class movement.
And did that feel lonely? I mean, you're not only fighting, you're teaching people a new political language, and with a relatively small group of people carrying quite a heavy load. I'm intrigued as to how that feels when you're in it. Does it feel lonely? Does it feel on some level kind of pointless, or is it like, we have no choice but to do this? Tell us about that.
Well, I think yes, it was lonely. One had to choose your allies carefully, even amongst ourselves as black people, because we call ourselves black people or the black community, there's nothing particularly homogenous about us. Some of us are revolutionary, some radical, some conservative, some decidedly reactionary. That's us in all our diversity as black people. So we had to choose our allies. And we had to, with those allies, break down barriers, open doors, through the work that we did. The Caribbean Education and Community Workers Association, for example, was a whole lot of us who met at the West Indian Student Center in Earl's Court practically every fortnight on a Sunday. The most intense discussions, the second half of the 1960s. That gave rise to all kinds of things. Code and the book, the supplementary education movement, and so on. So we had to find strength amongst ourselves and believe in what we were doing. That belief was strengthened and deepened because of our experience of struggle back in the Caribbean. We imported that, and it made us bolder, more assertive. We could relate to the issues of race and economy, issues of class, obviously, and begin to see how we can assist our children, particularly, in developing the strategies for coping with the racism that we know they were already facing.